to ask you what you do first thing every morning, I would get actually the same response. And that is that you looked at your phone. If I'd asked you the same question 20, 30, 50 years ago, the answer would have been very different. And actually probably would have been unique to you all. Manu, for you, it would have been doing your yoga, I guess. Our lives are being disrupted 1 second at a time. Life today is influenced by science and by technology more than it ever has been in the past. And yet, the way that we react to change today is actually no different to the way we reacted when we were cavemen. Once change arrives, first we fear it, then we examine it, and slowly we accept it. But what if we control this disruption? What if we harness it to our own use and our own timing? In tomorrow's world, this is much more likely to be the norm. Smart technologies will start to evolve on its own. In fact, it is evolving on its own. And it's resolving challenges that we as humanity have been plagued by since the beginning of time. But what is disruption? And how do you prepare for it? Now, these are some of the themes that I want to examine over the course of the next 20 minutes or so. Before we can talk about some of the forces that are influencing us today, let me take you back to what is literally the beginning of time, the Big Bang. Now, for those of you who believe in science, and I hope that there are very few of you who do not believe in science in this room today, the Big Bang was the genesis of our origins, the moment when forces collide. Gases merged and our world as we know it today was formed. Let's just imagine that for a moment. Picture what change looked like, what it felt like, what it even sounded like. According to NASA and the theories of physics, if we were to look at the universe 1 second after the Big Bang, what we would see is 10 billion degrees sea of neutrons, of protons, of electrons, of anti-electrons, of photons, of neutrons. And that's actually just science talk for you business people. It's just science talk for a lot of activity. What it means is that even a second after major forces have impacted our world, there were new organisms that had already adapted and were already hard at work conforming to what was then the new normal. Amazingly, despite being called the Big Bang, this event actually took place in complete silence. The Big Bang was effectively supersonic change, but at a whisper. Now, I use this example to remind you that often change doesn't announce itself. It actually comes very silently. Now, this one event took place 13.7 billion years ago, and it continues to influence us today. If we want to understand disruption, we must first learn to respect that it is defined by very silent but impactful forces that are constantly shaping our world. Another major disruption, just a little bit noisier when it arrived, was fire. There we go. And it brought with it a myriad of advantages that enabled the human race to become the dominant species of our world. Around 400,000 years ago, the first evidence that humans could control fire started to emerge. Archaeologists have found evidence of controlled fire in ancient campfires or hearths, where carbonized materials have been found in places where natural fires wouldn't naturally burn. Fire allowed these early humans the ability to extend the hours of light. It allowed them to harvest and to hunt much more efficiently. It provided the ability to cook. By so doing, it allowed harmful bacteria to be eliminated, and it drove the growth of larger populations. It forced people to gather and live in groups, the very basis of human culture today. And some scientists even say that fire inspired people to start learning from each other, the basis of the very first schools. Among these warm hearts spread knowledge of which crops would succeed, which areas were yet to be explored, and which leaders were suitable to run the clan. The discovery of fire demonstrated the use of a new technology to improve our lives. And those early fireplaces shaped our culture and our history in ways that no other technology have done since. Fire disrupted life as humans knew it and inspired the crackle of change. Now, much as I love history, we're actually here to talk about how to manage disruption on both current and future trends, and I'd like to fast forward to the present. When we talk about disruptions today, we often think about companies like Uber and like Airbnb. They've upended traditional business models by reshaping the way that businesses are run. But let's look at the case of two companies who had very different reactions to disruptions. Now, Blockbuster used to be the most famous video store in America. At its peak, it operated about 9,000 stores nationwide and bringing in $6 billion of annual revenues. In 1989, just 4 years after it started operations, the company would open a new outlet every 17 hours. There was literally one on every street corner. But in 2013, something happened. Another company, Netflix, began to gain popularity. Consumers no longer had to go out and rent movies. They could simply stream them from the comfort of their homes. Logically, Blockbuster should have seen this coming. The signs were there. Increased data availability, the staggering growth of video content, and the decreasing costs of connectivity were all signals that people would stop visiting their stores someday. In fact, the CEO of Netflix approached Blockbuster back in 2000 to explore a possible partnership, and he was thrown out of the office. Blockbuster just couldn't imagine what disruption that the big bang of internet would have in their business. And while Blockbuster confined itself to its cocoon and refused to acknowledge the wave of change coming its way, another well-known CEO saw the same forces, how it started to impact his business, and made the decision to sell what was then one of the most profitable music labels. 20 years ago, Polygram had grown so big that it had names as diverse as Bob Marley and Def Leppard. But they had grown during a different era, when LPs and music cassettes were king. In 1998, Polygram's CEO came across some research showing that consumers were using new technology known as CD-ROMs, which allowed them to store and to listen to more music with better definition. Now, for the younger ones in the room, that's what we used to play before MP3s became so famous. Now, based on that research, he actually sold his company, and he saved Polygram the indignity of a slow and painful death because of disruption. In short, he reacted within a second of the big bang that was transforming his industry. Now, I mentioned that change doesn't announce itself. It comes silently. I would add that it also comes very quickly. The Big Bang itself happened at a fraction of a second. It's actually 10 to the minus 10th degree. We're currently undergoing one of the biggest transformations in the history of mankind. Every day, we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. Now, for perspective, in 1992, the world was creating 100 gigabytes of data every day. And some of you can actually create that in a year, personally. Now, by next year, the world will be producing 50,000 gigabytes per second. Every year, we create 8 million new songs, 2 million new books, 182 billion tweets, and 400,000 new products. Many are calling this the fourth industrial revolution, which is set to fundamentally shift the way that we work and the way that we play. Technologies such as self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, big data, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, biotech, and quantum computing are all leveraging this explosion in data to create the basis of a new way of living. And everything is getting connected. Today, your fridge can talk to your phone to tell you when it needs restocking. And actually, it goes beyond that. It can talk to the grocery store to tell it to deliver new milk. And actually, you don't even have to be home to receive it. Because today, Amazon are working with Audi to give the delivery man a code, a one-time code. And so you can go to the Audi, you put the one-time code in, the boot pops open, you put your milk, well, hopefully not milk because it will go off by then, but you put your delivery in, you shut the lid, and the code expires. You don't have to wait at home anymore. Fitbit is already going beyond tracking steps to monitoring sleep and heartbeats. It's feeding that information back to doctors who can monitor the patients in real time. Plane engines speak to manufacturers and update real time so that the right fixes can be made once the aircraft lands on the ground. Actually, Jeff Immelt will tell you they can also fix the aircraft whilst it's in flight because the sensors in the engines are communicating back to GE. There are people in Safaricom today who are using their phones to control the lighting in their homes and monitoring who is at the front door. And it will soon be available to you all. Industry researchers, IDC, project that by the year 2020, 220 billion connected devices will be in use. This is truly the age of the Internet of everything. And what it means is that opportunity is only a connection away. In today's world, in the time that it takes to create an app, whole new business models are being created, and whole new business models are being made redundant. We're now a limitless planet tied together by technology. Technology has democratized access to markets in ways which were never before imagined. Today, the world is a single marketplace. Today, we are one. With a simple internet connection, the honey trader in Kitui can trade with an Australian buyer, and vice versa. All signs are that we are heading towards the big bang moments of technology. But let's bring this a little closer to home. Where does Africa sit in this story of evolution? Are we equipping our people with the right skills? Or are we force-fitting the mindset of an era that came to an end a very long time ago? The biggest challenge we have today is to ensure that we start to look for the spark, or the fire that will define our future. Now, given the remarkable shifts now taking place, the question then becomes, how do we succeed in this new world order? Because of the pace of evolution, the answer to this can change on an almost daily basis. For instance, today's MBA students have probably spent their lives learning about business models that are actually about to go the blockbuster way. We're currently sitting at a university that has built its name over nearly 50 years. through a network of professors, its investments in infrastructure, and its commitment to delivering education that takes you places. What happens when students realize, as I believe some of them have, that they can actually have a customized curricula at a fraction of the fee from the world's best universities from the comfort of their homes? The doctors who will graduate from our universities today are likely to have to relearn how to manage medicine in an age when computers will start to diagnose and offer treatments. The Uberization of the taxi field is already becoming a thing of the past, as self-driving cars start to roll out more commercially. Who is equipping these taxi drivers with skills so that they can survive these kinds of ships? Who is building the knowledge base for our doctors so that they can get the best out of tools like the Fitbit? Who is equipping our teachers with the skills to lecture in a data-rich environment? The answer to these questions holds the key to managing disruptive environments. We must manage disruption by harnessing these new technologies to our needs. Remember the story of the cavemen and the fire? When we think about managing disruptions, we must look for that single spark that will inspire change in our business. And this is not a problem for tomorrow's leaders. It's an issue that we must address now. A recent survey by New Vantage Partners finds that nearly half of top executives of the world's biggest companies believe that their firm is at risk of major disruption in the coming decade. These leaders are envisioning a future where change is coming fast, and it may be you either transform or you die. The study finds that disruption will come from a range of emerging capabilities, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, digital technologies, cloud computing, blockchain, and indeed new fintech models. I can almost guarantee that very few of us in this room has ever studied or prepared for any of these technologies. How can we prepare for these changes? For universities like USIU, it may mean a move towards a more individualized curriculum that adapts to the student rather than reliance on a one-size-fits-all curriculum. For industries like banking, it may mean a complete overhaul of how they operate. Cash may be king no longer. Many industries experts believe that cryptocurrencies provide more inclusive financial systems and drive wider competition in the financial sector. In China, it's possible to transfer money through Alipay, a mobile payment app used by more than 400 million people, using only their face as their credentials. Machine intelligence is helping companies make better decisions by putting tools and robots in charge of identifying the next big trend. Bots are being used by fashion companies to examine photos uploaded to social media to determine the next big fashion trend. Nanomanufacturing is creating big developments out of the smallest of resources. It can be used to manufacture products as small as proteins that can be modified to either carry or to become drugs in order to treat diseases at the molecular level. In agriculture, aeroponics is becoming a trend to watch. It allows any space, even this room, to become a viable farm. The innovation replaces sunlight with LED lighting. It uses a minimal amount of water to spread a mist around the plants. No soil, no sun, no land. What would this mean for the big ranches in the Rift Valley? And these massive changes are not limited to big industry. What will your cleaning lady do once companies like TaskRabbit come into town? The app links freelance workers with jobs, with handymen to movers to assistants. It's growing so big that it's already on the verge of a sale, so it can expand into emerging territories like Africa. where unemployment continues to be a huge problem. Now, the truth is, we can't really anticipate what's going to happen in this new universe. What we do know is that we are in the middle of a Big Bang moment that will fundamentally change the way that we work, the way that we live, and the way that we play. So how do we prepare for this coming wave of change? What we can do is to create the right type of individuals and businesses that can succeed in this era of change. A recent Deloitte and MIT survey finds that the biggest threats facing companies and individuals in this era of disruption is being inflexible and ignoring the signs of change. Now, to put this into some context, just 12% of the Fortune 500 companies from 1955 are still in existence today. Almost all of them were affected by the fact that they were too stubborn to change. They refused to embrace disruption, and they became victims of the Big Bang. It's worth noting that disruption doesn't always mean adopting the latest technology. Sometimes it means simply reusing existing technology for new purposes. Apple. Apple has been notoriously famous for their ability to recognize the signals before they became the trend. But their introduction of the iPod in 2001 was not particularly revolutionary, as MP3 players had already been in the market for over 10 years. But Steve Jobs termed it the existing options were crap. So what he did was to create a stylish device with increased storage. And we all know how that worked out for Apple. But the true success of the iPod lies in this role at the origins of digital music wave. Today, Apple Music is the company's only growing revenue stream and its second biggest profit driver, simply because the decision that Apple made 17 years ago has revolutionized how music is bought today. This is a great example of how to harness the power of disruption by using technology to develop new business models and reinventing the customer's experience. Using technology, Apple positioned itself as the middleman. It dematerialized the process of buying music so that the consumer and their revenues benefit. Now, this type of thinking is easily applicable to any other industry. Before I close my comments, I'd like us to think about how this works at a more personal level. Perhaps Barack Obama put it best in his farewell speech when he said that the next wave of economic dislocations won't come from overseas. It will come from the relentless pace of automation that will make a lot of good jobs obsolete. How will you compete in a job market where the robots are not only taking up more of the workload, they're learning how to do your job better than you at exponential rates? For me, the biggest reason that disruption doesn't wait for you to prepare yourself, it swoops in silently, but very, very quickly. You might not know exactly when or where it will happen, but you can read the signs. And just like Netflix, you can use these signs to position yourself to ride the wave of disruption. We have to remember that what we do next and how we do it will define our evolution in ways that no technological disruption has done yet. So let me close with a reminder of my 3 points on how to help ride the disruption wave. First is you embrace the technology in order to redefine the customer experience. Remember Steve Jobs, it was an MP3 player. You must use it to improve your operational effectiveness. Remember Steve Jobs, he wasn't buying and selling CDs. And you must use it to develop new business models. Ladies and gentlemen, it starts with you, and it starts right now. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.